Imagine climbing a staircase that rises 13 steps, only to slam you into a solid ceiling, a door on the second floor that opens into a 40-foot drop, a window built into the floor. This is not a nightmare. This is real. This is the Winchester Mystery House, a 160-room mansion in San Jose, California. Every architectural impossibility you see here was built on purpose. Stairs ascending to blocked ceilings, doors that open into solid walls, windows overlooking nothing, hallways that loop back on themselves. For 38 years, the hammering never stopped. Day and night, carpenters worked without pause. A single woman, a widow, driving workers relentlessly through the California nights. Sarah Pardee Winchester. Born into America's most notorious rifle dynasty, the Winchester rifle killed thousands, tens of thousands. It was called the gun that won the West, and Sarah's family grew wealthy beyond imagination from every bullet sold. Then her husband died. Then her daughter died. Both within years of each other. Sarah descended into devastating grief. She became consumed by a belief that would define her life. A medium told her something. The ghosts killed by Winchester rifles were haunting her family. To protect herself, she was told she must build. She must keep building. Forever. The building that never ended. The house that was never finished. A fortress against ghosts. For the next 38 years, Sarah Winchester never stopped. The hammering continued. Room after room, addition after addition, staircase after impossible staircase, windows in floors, doors in corners, hallways that led nowhere, all deliberate. Was she building a sanctuary? A labyrinth? A monument to obsession? The legend grew. Locals whispered about the mad widow building forever in her mansion. Investigators would later discover even more mysteries. Secret passages, hidden rooms, chambers built, then sealed. Today, over 1 century after Sarah's death, the mansion still stands, a monument to mystery itself. 30,000 square feet of unanswered questions, 10,000 windows, 200 staircases. What was she trying to keep out? What was she trying to keep in? The answers died with her, but the house still remembers. In every twisted hallway, in every impossible door, in every staircase to nowhere, the Winchester Mystery House stands as California's most enigmatic structure. And this is where our investigation begins. Before a mansion would bear her name, before a widow's guilt would drive her mad, there was a gun, not just any firearm, the Winchester Repeating Rifle, a weapon that would forge one of America's greatest fortunes, built entirely on death. Oliver Winchester did not invent the repeating rifle, but he perfected it. And in perfecting an instrument of mass killing, he created an empire worth millions. The story begins in 1860, when a young firearms engineer named Benjamin Henry patented an improved rifle design. Winchester saw opportunity where others saw machinery. He purchased Henry's patent and founded the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The rifle could fire multiple rounds without reloading, faster than any competitor, deadlier, more efficient. America's Civil War raged from 1861 to 1865. Union soldiers equipped with Winchester rifles held devastating firepower. The Confederacy could not match it, could not match him. Every bullet fired from a Winchester claimed a life. Every casualty, north and south, added to Oliver Winchester's wealth. By war's end, he had his first fortune, but the Civil War was only the beginning. As America pushed westward, Winchester rifles became the weapon of choice for settlers, soldiers, and cavalry units advancing into Native American territories. The Winchester was called the gun that won the West. But winning the West meant genocide, meant the systematic eradication of Native American nations with Winchester repeating rifles. Thousands upon thousands of indigenous people fell to Winchester fire. Apache, Lakota, Cheyenne, Comanche, nations decimated, cultures erased. Oliver Winchester's name on every cartridge casing left behind. From 1866 onward, the Winchester Company produced hundreds of thousands of rifles annually. Each firearm represented potential profit. Each death, a transaction completed. By the 1880s, Winchester rifles were being exported internationally. The Winchester name became synonymous with American firepower, American expansion, American dominance built on blood. Oliver Winchester accumulated vast wealth. He built mansions. He invested in railroads and real estate. He became one of America's richest men, all from selling instruments of death. He died in 1880, passing his empire to his widow, Sarah Pardee Winchester. She inherited not just money, but something darker, a fortune soaked in the blood of thousands. Sarah Winchester received approximately $20 million, nearly $700 million in modern currency. And with that inheritance came the weight of knowing exactly how it had been earned. The Winchester repeating rifle had killed an estimated 500,000 people across America's westward expansion. Every dollar of Sarah's inheritance represented death multiplied across a continent. She would spend the rest of her life wrestling with this inheritance, with the knowledge that her comfort, her home, her every luxury had been purchased with American blood. The gun had built the fortune. Now the fortune would build something extraordinary, a monument to guilt, to redemption, or perhaps to madness. The Winchester house awaited its architect. In the spring of 1862, New Haven, Connecticut, witnessed one of the season's most celebrated unions. Sarah Lockwood Pardee, daughter of a prominent Philadelphia family, stood poised to marry into American industrial royalty. Sarah was no ordinary bride. Born in 1839, she had cultivated herself into a woman of remarkable refinement, fluent in multiple languages, accomplished in music, conversant in literature and philosophy. Her suitor, William Wirt Winchester, represented the pinnacle of American success. As the son and heir to Oliver Winchester, whose repeating rifle had revolutionized warfare and manufacturing, William embodied prosperity itself. The Winchester name opened every door in Connecticut society. The family's rifle factory had transformed New Haven into an industrial powerhouse, generating wealth that seemed almost limitless during America's rapid expansion. Their wedding was the social event of the season. Society pages overflowed with descriptions of Sarah's ethereal beauty, her grace, her evident intelligence. She seemed destined for a life of influence, comfort, and continued ascension. By all accounts, the marriage was genuine. William and Sarah shared intellectual interests and cultural tastes. They traveled to Europe on extended honeymoons, collecting art, attending operas, exploring Paris and Rome together. Sarah became known throughout New Haven's finest circles as a woman of exceptional taste and hospitality. She hosted elaborate dinner parties where conversation ranged from European philosophy to American politics, from modern art to scientific advancement. In 1866, Sarah gave birth to their daughter, Annie. For a moment, Sarah's life seemed complete: a devoted husband, a healthy child, unwavering social position, and the resources to pursue any interest or passion she desired. Sarah threw herself into motherhood with the same dedication she applied to every pursuit. She ensured Annie received the finest education, exposure to music and languages, the cultural inheritance befitting her station. Yet beneath the surface of this enviable life, Sarah had begun experiencing symptoms of an ailment her physicians struggled to identify. By 1870, her health had noticeably declined. She was 29 years old. Sarah consulted the most respected medical minds of the era. Dr. Silas Mitchell, the renowned Philadelphia neurologist, examined her thoroughly. His diagnosis: a mysterious nervous condition of unknown origin, worsening with stress and emotional turbulence. The prescribed treatments of the time proved useless. Mercury injections, electrical stimulation, laudanum. Sarah grew increasingly desperate, increasingly isolated. The vibrant woman who had dazzled New Haven society was retreating, gradually, into illness and despair. Then came a blow that would fracture her world entirely. In March 1872, their daughter Annie, vibrant, healthy Annie, suddenly became ill with fever. Within days, The child was dead. Sarah's grief shattered her already fragile mental state. She descended into profound depression, her nervous condition exacerbated by this unbearable loss. The woman who had seemed to have everything now possessed only crushing sorrow. William Wirt Winchester attempted everything to restore his wife. He hired specialists, purchased estates in healthier climates, pursued every experimental treatment available to 19th century medicine, but no medical intervention could touch what had broken inside Sarah. In 1884, after 12 years of suffering and decline, William Wirt Winchester died, leaving Sarah alone with her grief, her wealth, and her unraveling sanity. Sarah inherited William's entire fortune, an estimated $20 million, with an annual income of approximately $1,000 per day. She was 45 years old, utterly alone, catastrophically wealthy, and spiritually shattered. It was in this state of grief-stricken desperation that Sarah attended a séance in Boston. There, a spiritualist medium claimed to contact Annie's spirit. The medium delivered a message that would transform Sarah's life forever. The medium told Sarah that a curse had haunted the Winchester name. All those who had died from Winchester rifles bore spiritual malice against the family. Only constant construction, the medium claimed, could appease their restless spirits and protect Sarah from joining them in death. Sarah believed this message absolutely. She had lost her child, she had lost her husband. The spiritualist's words seemed to explain the inexplicable tragedies that had consumed her life. There was, finally, an answer to her suffering. By 1884, Sarah Pardee Winchester had transformed from Belle of New Haven into a woman obsessed with a single mission: to build and build and never stop building. In 1866, Sarah Pardee Winchester gave birth to a daughter. Her name was Annie. She would live only 6 weeks. Annie was born into wealth and privilege, a legacy child destined to inherit her father's rifle manufacturing fortune. Her parents' joy seemed boundless in those early days of motherhood, but within weeks, something sinister crept into the nursery. Marasmus, a wasting disease of infancy, began consuming the child from within. Medical science in 1866 offered no cure, only helpless observation. Sarah watched her daughter fade. The vigil lasted 41 days. She witnessed every breath grow shallower, every cry weaker, every heartbeat more distant. Her child simply dissolved. When Annie died on July 25, 1866, she took something irreplaceable with her. Sarah's capacity for maternal connection vanished into the darkness alongside her daughter's final breath. The grief that followed was not the ordinary mourning of a bereaved parent. Sarah's despair transformed into something darker, an obsession with death, a desperate hunger to understand why her child had been taken. Her husband, William, offered what comfort he could, but Sarah's mind had begun its descent. She consulted spiritualists and mediums, desperate to reach across death's veil and reconnect with her daughter's spirit. More devastating still, Sarah learned she could never bear another child. The same wasting illness that claimed Annie had left her barren. Motherhood snatched away forever. Annie remained her only child, her sole heir, her eternal grief. The loss crystallized into something psychological. Sarah became convinced that spirits surrounded her, that Annie's death was not mere accident, but cosmic punishment, a message from the supernatural world. Within a decade of Annie's death, Sarah Winchester began hearing voices. Phantom footsteps echoed through her mansion. Disembodied presences made their intentions known. Her sanity, cracked but still holding, was beginning to shatter completely. The death of Annie Pardee Winchester became the foundational trauma, the first wound that would never heal. From this devastating loss emerged an obsession that would consume Sarah's entire existence, shape her fortune's expenditure, and drive her to construct an architectural monument to grief itself. In 1881, the Winchester dynasty crumbled. William Wirt Winchester, heir to an American firearms empire, died of tuberculosis. Sarah Winchester's world collapsed. At 39 years old, Sarah inherited approximately $20 million, an astronomical fortune in the 1880s. The Winchester Company's stock made her fabulously, impossibly wealthy. $1,000 arrived every single day, without fail. In an era when a skilled worker earned $2 daily, Sarah's daily income represented absolute, incomprehensible abundance. She owned nearly 50% of Winchester Repeating Arms Company, the rifle manufacturer that had armed America's frontiers, won the Civil War, and dominated global markets. She was untouchable financially, yet Sarah was utterly alone. Her only child, Annie, had died in infancy decades earlier. Now, with William gone, no living soul remained to share her boundless fortune or ease her profound isolation. Money, it seemed, could not purchase companionship. Wealth could not resurrect the dead. Every dollar that arrived daily served only as a cruel reminder of what her fortune could never buy: family, love, redemption. Sarah withdrew from society. She hired nurses and attendants, but confided in no one. The wealthiest woman in America sat alone in her grand houses, surrounded by servants, yet profoundly isolated. Desperate for meaning, Sarah consulted spiritualists, mediums who promised communication with the dead. The grieving widow would spend her endless fortune seeking contact with William and Annie beyond the veil. In 1884, Sarah visited a Boston spiritualist. The medium delivered a message that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her life and fortune. William, it said, had a warning for her from beyond. The medium claimed William's spirit revealed a terrible truth. The Winchester fortune was cursed. Thousands had died from Winchester rifles. Blood debt demanded payment. Sarah herself was in mortal danger. Only one solution existed. The spiritualist warned: perpetual construction. Sarah must build continuously, without ceasing. The hammers and saws must never fall silent. Only constant building could appease the spirits. Whether genuine belief, desperate grief, or psychological breakdown, Sarah accepted this pronouncement. She would dedicate her infinite fortune and remaining life to construction. The building would become her obsession, her penance, her purpose. In 1884, Sarah made a pivotal decision. She would relocate to California and purchase a modest farmhouse on several acres in San Jose. There, she would construct an endless building, a monument to inherited guilt and supernatural dread. What began as a frantic widow's desperate attempt to commune with spirits would become one of America's most bizarre architectural phenomena. The Winchester Mystery House would birth an enigma that persists today. Sarah Winchester's transformation was complete. From grieving widow to spiritual penitent to obsessive builder, she would spend the next 38 years reshaping an American landscape with her tormented vision and bottomless fortune. In the shadow of Victorian grief, a séance room became the stage for a prophecy that would haunt Sarah Winchester forever. America in the late 1800s was gripped by spiritualism, a movement that promised communion with the dead through mediums and séances across the nation. Grief consumed America after the Civil War. Thousands sought mediums, desperate to contact fallen soldiers, lost children, and deceased loved ones. It was not superstition, it was survival. Sarah Winchester, newly widowed and inheriting a vast fortune from the Winchester rifle fortune, was vulnerable to this desperate seeking. Her husband William had died in 1881, leaving her alone with unimaginable wealth. In 1884, the legend says, Sarah attended a séance in Boston with a renowned medium. What transpired in that darkened room would reshape the course of her entire existence. The medium allegedly went into a trance, her voice deepening as she spoke of spirits, hundreds of them, crying out from beyond. Spirits of Native Americans, spirits of soldiers, spirits of the innocent. All of them, the medium proclaimed, had been killed by Winchester rifles. The blood of thousands stained Sarah's fortune, her mansion, her very soul. They demanded retribution. The medium's voice grew urgent. Sarah must leave the East immediately. She must travel westward to the edge of civilization. There, She must build a house, but not a home, a refuge, a house that would never be completed, a house where the cursed spirits could reside, where they could find peace. If she ceased building, if she stopped her work, the spirits would claim her. Death would follow. Whether this séance actually occurred remains hotly debated by historians. No records definitively prove the medium's identity. No documentation confirms Sarah's presence, yet she fled Boston within months. In 1886, Sarah Winchester arrived in San Jose, California, a town of 6,000 souls on the western frontier. She purchased an 8-room farmhouse on 40 acres of prune orchards, and then something extraordinary began. Sarah hired contractors and carpenters. She ordered blueprints and materials. The construction never stopped. Not for 24 years, not until her death. Rooms were added, demolished, rebuilt in different configurations. Hallways led nowhere. Doors opened onto walls. Staircases ascended and dropped suddenly. The architecture became a labyrinth without logic, or perhaps with a logic beyond human comprehension. Workers reported that Sarah never slept. She consulted a chronometer obsessively, timing each task. Rooms contained 7 windows, others had none. The obsession became compulsive, consuming. The mansion expanded to 160 rooms. Some say it was driven by madness. Others suggest it was driven by something far stranger, the restless demands of the dead, demanding eternal architecture as their monument. The séance's prophecy had become manifest. Whether supernatural curse or psychological delusion, Sarah Winchester had built a house to honor the dead, one that would outlive her and become America's most enigmatic mansion. In 1884, Sarah Winchester made a choice that would reshape her existence. She purchased an unfinished 8-room farmhouse in Santa Clara Valley, California. What began as a modest dwelling would become something far darker, a monument to obsession, built not from architectural vision, but from an invisible compulsion. The construction was unlike anything the valley had ever witnessed. There was no master blueprint, no grand design sketched by licensed architects. Instead, Sarah Winchester herself dictated the work each day through simple, obsessive drawings. Every morning, she would produce new sketches. Every evening, construction crews would interpret her visions without question. The work never stopped. Day and night, the hammering began and never ceased. Round-the-clock shifts meant the sound of hammers became the heartbeat of the property. Thousands of nails driven into wood, thousands more the next day. The rhythm was relentless, mechanical, almost ritualistic. Workers reported a strange pattern emerging. Staircases would be built only to be torn down. Doors opened onto blank walls. Rooms connected to rooms that led nowhere. There was no logic to it, no progression toward completion. This was not construction guided by reason. This was an endless, compulsive act. Sarah Winchester seemed driven by something beyond herself, as though her hands were being moved by forces she could not name or control. The hammering itself held significance she believed profound. According to her convictions, the constant noise served a specific purpose: to confuse the spirits that pursued her, to appease their endless hunger for vengeance. If she stopped the hammering, the spirits would find her. If she ceased construction, the haunting would intensify. The work was not a choice anymore. It was a necessity, a compulsion, as involuntary as breathing. The absence of any rational plan became the clearest symptom of a mind under siege. No architect could explain the design. No builder could predict what would come next. Sarah alone knew the invisible logic that drove each nail, each board, each wall. By 1885, the farmhouse was transforming into something unprecedented. The 8 rooms had multiplied. Additions sprawled across the property in directions that defied conventional planning. The house was becoming a labyrinth. Workers began to speak in hushed tones about the nature of their employment. This was not normal construction. This was something else entirely, a monument to something dark, something unseen, something that would never be satisfied. The hammering became louder, The rhythm became faster. The expansion became more frantic. Sarah Winchester had surrendered to forces she believed were controlling her, and the house itself became the physical manifestation of that invisible war. This was Chapter 7 of an unfolding nightmare, the moment when obsession transformed into ritual, when a woman's grief became architecture, when the hammering never stopped because stopping meant facing what pursued her in the dark. Inside these walls, obsession calcified into architecture. A mansion became a monument to madness. Sarah Lockwood Winchester inherited $20 million and an unshakable conviction. Spirits demanded constant construction. For 38 years, hammers never ceased. Carpenters worked around the clock, building impossible geometries and architectural paradoxes. The staircase to nowhere begins at the second floor, ascending 13 steps into solid ceiling. Dead end. Purposeful absurdity. A door opens from the second story onto empty air. A 7-foot drop to concrete below. The jump is certain death. Pillars inverted, supporting nothing. Windows embedded in hardwood floors, offering glimpses into rooms below. Geography made meaningless. The obsession with 13 permeates every corner. 13 bathrooms, 13 panels indoors, 13 hooks in closets, 13 step staircases throughout the mansion. Some lead to rooms, others terminate at walls, their purpose unknowable. 13 windows, 13 panels. This numerical fixation appears in doorways, in window arrangements, in the very skeleton of rooms. The séance room sits deep within the mansion, isolated and deliberately obscured. Heavy curtains, no external windows, controlled darkness. Spy holes perforate walls between rooms, tiny apertures allowing observation without detection. The house becomes a surveillance apparatus. Winchester designed deliberate mazes. Corridors branch into dead ends. Hallways twist impossibly. Every turn confounds spatial logic. These passages served a supernatural purpose. They were meant to trap malevolent spirits, to confuse and contain otherworldly entities. Every architectural choice reflected spiritualist philosophy. The living and dead inhabited the same space, separated by construction. The mansion contains 160 floors of surface area, 240 bedrooms, 37 staircases, each with unique dimensions. No two doors are identical. No two windows match. As symmetry becomes a principle, harmony dissolves into controlled chaos and deliberate discord. The house grew perpetually. Walls appeared where halls existed. Rooms were sealed shut and forgotten. Construction became its own justification. Carpenters quit unexpectedly. Some reported supernatural encounters. Others claimed the work was meaningless, endless, and psychologically damaging. The design defies conventional building practices. Load-bearing walls in impossible locations. Structural integrity achieved through obsessive redundancy. Winchester believed that completion meant death. The house was her extended life, a mechanism for spiritual survival through endless becoming. When darkness fell upon the mansion, Sarah Winchester transformed into something else entirely, a woman possessed by communion with the dead. Every night at midnight, she entered the Blue Room, her sanctuary, her séance chamber, where the spirits dictated tomorrow's construction. Servants reported hearing her voice, speaking in whispers to invisible visitors. Hours passed. Instructions flowed from beyond the veil. Walls must move, halls must turn, rooms must be built and destroyed. By 1900, Sarah's nightly rituals had become elaborate theater. She believed malevolent spirits pursued her relentlessly through the house. Spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles demanded revenge. To escape them, she created an impossible labyrinth. Secret passages between rooms, staircases leading nowhere, hidden doors disguised as walls. The mansion became her fortress against the dead. She changed rooms nightly, sometimes multiple times. Servants could never predict where she would sleep. This unpredictability, she believed, would confuse the vengeful spirits hunting her. The Winchester house had become a metaphor for her fractured mind. Rooms within rooms, doors that opened onto blank walls, a physical manifestation of psychological imprisonment. A housemaid named Henrietta, who served Sarah for years, left behind chilling testimony. She described her employer's nocturnal wanderings as those of a woman trapped between worlds. Sarah would appear at 3 in the morning, dressed in her night clothes, lamp in hand, searching rooms that hadn't existed the night before. Moving furniture, rearranging corridors, obeying invisible architects. The servants whispered. They witnessed her speaking to empty air, nodding as if receiving commands, then frantically directing workers the next morning to execute phantom instructions. Some nights, Sarah barricaded herself in rooms with furniture, blocking doorways, creating barriers between herself and the hostile spirits. Isolation became her defense mechanism. The Blue Room sessions continued relentlessly, night after night, year after year. Sarah's handwriting filled notebooks with building specifications, supposedly dictated by her late husband. Medical understanding was limited in 1900. Was she suffering from grief-induced psychosis, paranoia, or genuine spiritual contact? Even historians cannot determine where devotion ended and illness began. Her sister-in-law Nettie occasionally visited and left accounts of Sarah's deteriorating mental state. The woman she had known was gone, replaced by someone haunted and fragmented. The construction noise never stopped. Hammers by day, phantom architects by night. The mansion grew like a cancer, consuming space, money, and Sarah's remaining sanity. By 1910, Sarah had spent over $1 million on construction. The mansion contained 160 rooms, endless corridors, architectural impossibilities, a monument to one woman's psychological descent. The loneliness deepened with each passing year. Sarah dined alone, conducted business through closed doors. Her only true companions were the spirits she spoke to in darkness. Workers reported that she never appeared during daylight, emerging only after sunset. Her skin had become pale, her habits increasingly nocturnal. She was becoming a ghost herself. The servants noticed her weight declining, her hair turning completely white. The woman who commanded an empire of construction was being consumed by invisible forces she could not defeat. Paranoia intensified. She believed certain spirits were more dangerous than others. Specific rooms became forbidden zones. Certain corridors had to be sealed immediately after construction. In the Blue Room, her voice grew softer, more urgent. The spirits, she believed, were running out of patience. The mansion was not yet complete. Their revenge remained unfulfilled. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Sarah Winchester was this: did the house drive her mad, or did her madness build the house? The answer remains as impossible to untangle as the mansion itself. On April 18, 1906, the ground itself would become Sarah Winchester's greatest adversary. At 5:12 a.m., a magnitude 7.9 earthquake tore through the Bay Area, obliterating entire city blocks in seconds. The Winchester mansion, still under construction after 16 years, became a death trap of collapsing walls and falling beams. Sarah Winchester was sleeping in the Daisy bedroom on the 2nd floor when the earth convulsed beneath her home. She awoke to the sound of splintering wood, the groans of structural failure, and the deafening roar of her unfinished house collapsing around her. The top 3 floors of the mansion, the very section housing the nearly completed front rooms, crumbled into rubble and twisted metal. Miraculously, Sarah survived, but she emerged from the disaster convinced the spirits had sent a message. Their anger was absolute. The front rooms, those elegant, nearly finished chambers she had labored over for years, had been the spirits' target. They had destroyed them in anger. Sarah interpreted the earthquake not as geological misfortune, but as supernatural retribution. The spirits rejected her progress toward completion. Workmen cleared the rubble. Contractors assessed the damage. But Sarah made a decision that would define the next decade of construction. She would seal off the entire front section of the mansion forever. 30 rooms, locked, abandoned, forbidden. No guest would ever see those rooms. No sunlight would ever reach them again. They became a tomb of aborted ambition. Construction would continue elsewhere, to the east, to the south, in directions the spirits had not targeted. But the front rooms would remain Sarah's greatest monument to fear. The earthquake had transformed Sarah's mansion from a monument to her wealth into something far darker, a physical manifestation of her psychological imprisonment. She had built a prison, and she had locked herself inside it. The spirits, she believed, would ensure she never escape. On September 5th, 1922, Sarah Winchester's heart stopped beating, and for the first time in 38 years, the hammers fell silent. 38 years, 38 uninterrupted years of construction, of endless noise, of relentless building. The moment she died, the hammering ceased. No prayers were answered. No spirit was appeased. The mansion stood at exactly 256 rooms, incomprehensible in its sprawl, incomplete in its purpose. The will was read. Sarah's vast fortune, estimated at $5 million, nearly equal to the entire mansion itself, was divided among her surviving relatives. But the building itself became the greatest burden of all. No heir wanted it. The mansion was abandoned almost immediately, left to rot in the California sun. It took weeks of continuous auctioning to empty those rooms. Furniture sold, paintings dispersed, personal effects scattered to strangers across the country. Workers discovered something haunting among the rubble and refuse. Nails driven halfway into boards, hammers abandoned mid-strike, the construction frozen in the exact moment she stopped breathing. Carpenters walked away from their stations without finishing their work. No final nail was driven. No completion was ever achieved. The silence was absolute. The tragic irony was absolute. Sarah had believed that constant construction would grant her immortality. Instead, her death brought instant cessation. The building that was supposed to never stop ended the moment she did. She had tried to cheat death through endless building. Instead, she had only guaranteed that the moment of her death would be the moment everything stopped. Her obsession had not saved her. It had only made her silence more deafening. For 38 years, no one in San Jose could escape the sound. The hammering was the heartbeat of Sarah's fear, made manifest. When her heart stopped, so did the noise. 69 years old, she had spent more than half her life building. The result? Not safety, not redemption, not immortality, only silence, only emptiness, only an unfinished tomb to her own terror. The Winchester Mystery Mansion became precisely what Sarah had feared most, a monument to her obsession, a physical manifestation of her descent into madness, and a living reminder that no amount of hammering can outrun death. Sarah Winchester died in silence, and the house she had obsessively built for nearly 4 decades stood witness to the eternal truth she had tried so desperately to deny. Nothing we build can stop the inevitable. The Winchester Mystery House still stands in San Jose, California. Over a century later, visitors walk its corridors seeking answers the mansion refuses to give. Sarah Winchester died on September 5th, 1922. Just months after her passing, the doors opened to the public. The house that consumed her life became America's most bizarre tourist attraction. Admission was paid. The laborers were dismissed. The construction that never ceased for 38 years suddenly stopped. The silence must have been deafening. The question that haunts historians remains unanswered. Was Sarah Winchester a woman possessed by genuine supernatural fear, a widow unmoored by grief and loss, or simply an eccentric millionaire with endless resources and nothing but time? The spiritualist movement of her era promised communion with the dead. Séances filled darkened parlors. Mediums spoke with certainty about messages from beyond. In those circles, Sarah's obsession seemed almost reasonable, yet even her contemporaries found the house excessive. Reporters who visited described it as madness made manifest, a physical expression of a mind unable to accept finality, unable to stop moving, unable to rest. Modern psychology offers another lens: prolonged grief disorder, obsessive-compulsive behavior, perhaps even psychosis brought on by isolation and wealth's protection from consequence. The mansion becomes a monument to untreated mental anguish. But there exists one more interpretation, less sensational, perhaps more human. A widow fighting the only way she knew how, keeping workers employed during economic uncertainty, maintaining purpose through endless creation, building against the void. The house contains 178 rooms, though the exact number changes depending on how you count its impossible geometry. Staircases lead nowhere, doors open onto walls, windows frame only darkness. Thousands visit annually. They walk the same halls Sarah walked. They ascend the same stairs. They stand in rooms where no clear purpose ever existed, and they leave with more questions than answers. Some visitors report unexplained cold spots, doors closing on their own, footsteps in empty corridors. The house has become what Sarah perhaps always intended, a place where the living and dead coexist in permanent confusion. Was she mad? Haunted? Grieving? All three? The Winchester Mystery House keeps its final secret. It stands as America's most enduring enigma, a labyrinth that reflects back whatever interpretation the visitor brings. Sarah Winchester spent 38 years building a house that could never be finished. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps the construction itself was the answer to her unanswerable grief. The Winchester Mystery House remains open. Visitors continue arriving, and somewhere within its endless corridors, whether haunted by spirits or simply by the echo of one woman's sorrow, the mystery persists, a question the house itself refuses to answer.